I just want to insert my opinion for like 2 seconds on the Nolan Wells case, because I just saw where Nancy Grace came out with the transcribed CETO call. And here's my thing. I'm from the South, so I feel like I can speak on this because I grew up around nothing but racist, okay? And so as someone with this skin, I feel like I could speak out on this. Here's my questions. Why? First of all, so many of y'all want to say that it wasn't murder. Like, so many of y'all were so quick to say it wasn't murder, that things happened. If that was the case, then why do none of the friends know what happened? Furthermore, Nancy Grace just released a CETO call. Anybody in their right mind, if you hear what was on that call in the background where they're asking, is someone dead? First things first, you're not going to call CETO. You're going to call 911, typically, if you're worried about someone. Secondly, why did you turn down Coast Guard when they asked if you needed the Coast Guard? If you are sinking, and if there is that shit going on in the background, like what they're asking about, is someone dead, you should say yes to any bit of help that you can get, right? I also think it's odd that all of them got rid of their social media. None of them have really had much of an explanation. They do what your typical white people do in those circumstances. Look at the Murdoch case, and there was no one of color in that case. But because they were prominent Caucasians surrounding around that death of the girlfriend, they did everything they could to cover up and get him out of it. The same rules apply to this, and like in my head, the same rules apply to this. They were both situations were boating, and in those situations, someone unfortunately lost their life. But getting back to the Nolan case, hearing that voice, like hearing that recording of them asking for, or just asking if someone is dead in the background. How is it that you're clueless and you have no idea what could have happened to him? That call, like, there's a reason why Nancy Grace got her bob fixed to the heavens, honey. That thing wouldn't move in hurricane force winds. She knows something. Her gut tells her something, just like my gut has been telling me something has been going on with this case. It was too weird. It was too weird. And I got to be careful with how I say things, because y'all love to drag me through the mud anytime I talk out against Caucasians. So I'm trying to be careful with how I word this. But before I get in the shower, I've had a long day at work. Before I get in the shower, I really wanted to put a little bit of 2 cents in your head with that, because I commented on Nancy Grace's video and already people have started coming for me. And all I did was comment, why did we call CETO and not 911? And several people commented and said, well, because there was no medical emergency. You fucking racist idiot. What do you mean there's no medical emergency? Open your fucking ears. And do you not hear them in the background asking if someone is dead? Are you that small-minded that you will forego any bit of the facts because you need your story to be the truth, where no one was murdered? If that was your youngin', if the roles were reversed, y'all, my God, as a white person, I can come out and say that. I know good and well if the roles were reversed, y'all would be dragging this through the mud. But because it was a group of Caucasians and it was an African-American person that passed away, all of you small-minded, closed, racist people, you immediately want to assume that he died of natural causes, or he caused his own death, or it wasn't a murder. I will always stand on the right side of history. I promise you. I don't care how many people cancel me, how many people come for me. My boys will know that their mother always stood on the right side of history. I have said that there was something fishy about this case from the moment it came out in the news. And as soon as I posted something about it, y'all came for me. And I'm just here to say that I stand with Nancy. There's a reason why Nancy is as into this as she was the Casey Anthony shit. Okay? She knows, because her spidey senses are tingling just like my spidey senses are tingling. If a youngin' ever went with me on a boat, it don't matter if they were black, white, brown, purple, green, blue, square, triangle, rectangle, obtuse, Capoose, Papatoose, you name it. That baby's coming home with me and my family. I don't care if anybody got in a fight or an altercation. If you go on the boat with me and my husband, I'm bringing you back. Scout's honor. Promise. Promise. There's something, you never leave anybody, anywhere, especially on water. Y'all can get the fuck out of here with your excuses. That's the thing about you racist people. Y'all will make an excuse out of anything to justify any type of actions. Every single time. There's always an excuse. Just as soon as something happens in the media when an African American or a brown skinned person is involved, you're quick to say, stupid is as stupid does, right? All those things. But you didn't say that about the young girl that died with the Murdochs on the boat. Everybody was boo-hooing tears about her dying. It was so tragic, right? But we don't have that same sympathy for this poor youngin' who had his whole life ahead of him. It doesn't matter what the familial situations were, because I saw that being thrown around. That doesn't matter. He went out with a group of friends. He should have came back with a group of friends, alive. And if he ever went missing, their first thing should have been, we need to find him. We need to know what's going on. How is it that we all of a sudden, everybody's got amnesia and nobody knows what happened to him and nobody can find him? Make that make sense. Those are the type of people that I don't want my children around. Y'all are so twisted. Y'all are so twisted. I cannot wait for the truth to come out about this poor baby. Just to prove to a lot of you small-minded, closed-minded, racist people, how many more people have to die for you to see that there is a common denominator here? There's a problem. I wouldn't let my own children who are Caucasian go on a boat with a group full of other Caucasian children. Let that sink in. We'll not allow it. The only time I allow it is if I'm there. That's it. I pray that some of y'all find a little bit of brains in between your ears. And I pray that some of y'all find a little bit of empathy too. Because all of you closed-minded, small-minded racists are also you claim to be Christians. Y'all are the most evil people I have ever seen in my entire life. Evil. Evil people. And that right there is why so many young people, and I don't even think I'm young, but I can include myself in this. There's a reason why me and my family don't go to church every Sunday, every Wednesday like I did when I grew up. Your body is your temple. Jesus is right here. Those of you that go to church on Sundays and Wednesdays, and the ones that post your Bible verses or, you know, live, laugh, love, eat, pray, love, whatever, on your walls, you're the same people. You're the same people. I'm disgusted with y'all. Like, to everyone with brown skin, please let me formally apologize, because I do not share the views and the thought patterns and anything to do with what the people that share my skin color have. But I apologize for these small-minded people, because as someone who was raised around nothing but small-minded racists, I grew a brain myself and decided what I wanted to pick as right and wrong. And I'm so sorry that not all of us feel this way, but I promise you I feel so passionately about this that I will do everything that I can in my power to never stop running my lips to help just shed light onto what y'all go through. I love you, but I had to do this. I got to get in the shower. Bye.
A short, unscripted video filmed in a bathroom in late July has become one of the most widely shared pieces of content in the Nolan Wells case. In it, a woman speaking from her bathroom before a shower declared that the friends who left Horn Island without Nolan Wells already knew something was wrong. She framed her comments as the perspective of a white Southern woman raised around prejudice. She asked why anyone would call a private towing company instead of 911. She asked why Coast Guard help was declined. She pointed to background noise on the sea tow recording and treated it as proof that someone on the boat believed a person was already gone. She compared the situation to a high-profile South Carolina boating case that later revealed extensive deception. She generalized about entire communities protecting their own. Within days, the video, and a second channel that amplified it with scripture, reached audiences large enough to rival official press events. What follows is not a defense of any individual and not an attack on any community. It is a careful separation of what the reaction claimed, what the public record actually contains, and why the difference matters for a case that is still open. Every factual assertion will be kept in its proper category. What a named person stated, what remains interpretation, what investigators have confirmed, what they have not. Nolan Wells was 18. He had just finished Ocean Springs High School and was preparing for football at Southwest Mississippi Community College. The night before the 4th of July, he stayed home and cooked salmon for his parents. Friends who had known him for years described him as energetic and big-hearted, the kind of person who made others feel they mattered. One simply called him a brother. The group he traveled with had made the trip to Horn Island for years. The island is a barrier strip roughly 10 miles offshore, federal land, reachable only by private boat, with no buildings, no stores, and no permanent presence. Hundreds of boats and thousands of people converge there every Independence Day. Riding out with one group and returning with another is ordinary practice. On July 4, 2026, Nolan went. Sometime that afternoon, the boat his friends were using began taking on water after its bilge pump failed. A call went out to Sea Tow, a private membership-based marine assistance service. 2 days later, Nolan was recovered in the water near the island's northwestern tip. An independent examination left both cause and manner undetermined. The state examination is complete and sealed for grand jury review. Roughly 60 witnesses have been interviewed. The FBI is assisting with digital evidence. A mutual inspection of Nolan's phone has been agreed. No one has been charged. That is the fixed public record. Everything else currently circulating sits in the space between those points. The reaction that spread farthest began with a woman speaking directly into a phone camera, describing herself as someone raised in the South who felt she could speak from that experience. That framing, personal, unfiltered, delivered before a shower after a long workday, helped the video travel. It also means the claims inside it were made quickly, without the sourcing that more deliberate coverage requires. We will examine each of those claims against the documented timeline. The central factual claim rests on a single question. If people on the boat truly believe someone might be in danger, why call a towing company instead of emergency services? The premise collapses two separate events hours apart into one moment. The sea tow call was placed in the afternoon while the boat itself was taking on water. According to Warren Hudson, one of the friends who has spoken on the record, the group at that stage still believed Nolan intended to catch a later ride with someone else. The mechanical emergency was real. The battery had become submerged. The pump had failed. A nearby boat offered a tow. The sea tow call formalized assistance and confirmed membership details. Nolan, according to every account from people who were present, was not on that boat. He was still on the island. The call that addressed concern for Nolan came later that night. Warren has stated he contacted the United States Coast Guard around 11 o'clock once it became clear Nolan had not returned and could not be reached. That report initiated a 2-day search involving the Coast Guard, the Jackson County Sheriff's Office, the Mississippi Department of Marine Resources, the National Park Service, and volunteer groups. treating an afternoon call about a sinking vessel and a nighttime call about a missing teenager as the same decision erases the actual sequence.
Detail assistance, Vicky speaking. How can I help you?
Hey, we're at the west tip of Horn, and our bilge pump stopped working. We're sinking. Can y'all please come? We have a membership.
All right, of course. How far is the work coming up, sir? Can you give me a description? Ankles? Hello?
What'd you say? Hey.
Yes. How far is the water coming up, sir?
It's coming up. We're just sinking. I don't know. Like we're going down now.
All right. Well, let's get you going. Membership number or phone number listed on that count, sir.
I don't know the phone number. It's either. I think it's. Try that.
All right.
I know we have a membership, like guaranteed. I don't
All
have
right.
the tag
Unless
on
you
here.
have a
It got ripped
membership
off.
number or anything, it's okay. I'll get you over to the captain. What's the best phone number to reach you at?
The verified recording released by the state agency begins with a young male voice reporting a mechanical problem at the west tip of Horn Island. That is the content of the call as released. The background noise under the conversation has been the subject of enhancement, counter-examination, and intense public interpretation. No official laboratory has authenticated the contested phrases that circulated online. The second major claim in the reaction treats background voices on that recording as evidence that someone on the boat already believed a person was gone. Multiple independent reviews of the complete unedited file, including analysis by a digital forensics examiner and commentary by a former officer who interviewed friends connected to the case, have concluded that nothing in the verified audio contains a clear, confirmed reference to Nolan being in danger at the time the call was placed. Ambiguous sounds exist. Expectation shapes perception. Once listeners are told what words to hear, the brain readily supplies them. That phenomenon does not prove the words are absent. It proves that captions and prior claims are powerful variables. Treating an interpretation as a transcript is the step the reaction takes and the step the documented record does not support. Two additional claims remain unverified as of the most recent public information. One asserts that the group actively declined Coast Guard assistance during the afternoon call. No such exchange appears in the released recording or in official reporting. It is possible the detail refers to an undocumented interaction. It is also possible it confuses the fact that a private tow resolved the mechanical issue that afternoon. Until a recording, document, or on-record statement confirms it, the claim stays unverified. The second claim, appearing in the accompanying commentary, asserts that a grandfather connected to the group already knew a tow would not be needed. No documentation supports that assertion either. Unverified does not mean false. It means the sourcing required for confirmation is not yet public.
Javon, I want to come to you because you're his friend. You were on the island on the 4th. You were on a different boat. Do you recall seeing him at all that day?
Yes, ma'am. I did see him when I was out there on the island.
Can you tell me what you saw? Does anything seem strange to you about the difference that people are saying of how he was separated from the group?
No, ma'am. I don't think that Nolan would say, hey, bro, I'm staying with this girl on the island.
While reaction content focused on the audio, a different voice entered the record. Someone who had known Nolan for years rather than a single afternoon. Javon Williams was on Horn Island that day on a different boat. He has stated he has never known Nolan to stay behind while friends leave, and that if Nolan rode with you, he came back with you. His statement is a character-based assessment, built on long observation. It is not an eyewitness contradiction of a moment he did not see. The distinction matters, and it sits alongside the consistent account from the friends who say Nolan chose to remain. The friend group's account has remained consistent across multiple interviews. Traston Shepard told national television that Nolan stayed behind with a young woman he had met that day. Warren Hudson described the mechanical failure and the belief that Nolan intended to catch a later ride. Consistency across repeated tellings is a real signal. It is not the only signal. Nolan's father has independently expressed the same reservation Javon voiced. The family cannot understand why their son would separate from the group he arrived with. They raised him to stay with the people he traveled with. Two people with the deepest knowledge of who Nolan was, arriving at the same core doubt without apparent coordination, form a pattern worth weighing. It does not prove the friend group wrong. It introduces a character-based contradiction that the digital and forensic records still under seal may eventually support or undercut. If you want every new named account examined with the same care, fully stated, fairly limited to what it actually shows, and placed against the rest of the record, subscribe now. Most coverage either inflates a single quote into a conclusion or ignores it because it complicates a preferred narrative. When the sealed examination, the phone data, and the remaining witness statements move, the difference between evidence and assumption will be measurable. That is the reason to stay with verified updates rather than the fastest reaction. One comparison raised in the reaction deserves serious treatment rather than dismissal. The Murdoch case involved a prominent South Carolina family, a young woman's death in a boating incident, and years of deception that eventually unraveled into far larger crimes. Institutional deference and social position delayed full scrutiny. That history is real. It is reasonable for people watching any unresolved case involving connected young people and water to ask whether similar dynamics could be at work. The parallel stops at the point where hard evidence is required. The Murdoch case moved from rumor to conviction because investigators eventually obtained phone records, financial documents, and forensic links that connected specific people to specific acts. An undetermined independent examination is not the same as a finding of homicide. Treating the two as interchangeable skips the painstaking work that turned one case into a conviction, and that this case still requires. Two pieces of viral evidence that once seemed to support a cover-up narrative have already been directly addressed. A video that appeared to show a heated argument over a phone was clarified on the record by Traston Shepard, who identified the voice as his own in a separate confrontation unrelated to Nolan. A photograph that circulated as proof Nolan had survived the island and appeared later was shown through metadata to have been taken more than a week earlier. Leaving those corrections out of a reaction built on the idea of obvious concealment produces an incomplete picture. Alcohol was reportedly present among a group that included minors. That detail has been used to point suspicion at specific young men whose documented role that day included helping tow a disabled vessel. Accusations without supporting evidence have already produced cease and desist actions and documented harassment. If toxicology eventually confirms underage drinking, that would be a separate legal question. It is not the same question as what happened to Nolan, and it does not become evidence of the latter simply by repetition. The broader conversation about whether this case received the scrutiny it deserved from the outset is legitimate. Attorney Ben Crump has raised it consistently, framing it as a pattern rooted in lived experience rather than an accusation against any single investigator. That position rests on documented disparities across decades of American criminal justice and deserves serious engagement. What the reaction video does is different. It moves from a question about institutional thoroughness to a sweeping generalization about an entire racial group, asserting that white communities as a whole reliably protect wrongdoing, or that a parent would refuse to allow her own children on a boat with other white children, applies collective judgment to individuals who have not been charged. That reasoning structure is the same one historically used against black defendants in communities. Flipping the direction does not make the structure sound. Journalism exists to examine institutions and patterns. It does not exist to platform demographic guilt by association. Real people connected to this friend group, several of them still teenagers, have already faced documented threats after speaking publicly. Traston Shepard has spoken about the cost of correcting the record on the argument video. Others have required legal intervention after accusations spread beyond evidence. Intent does not determine outcome. Content that treats unverified claims and sweeping generalizations as settled fact travels downstream with the caveats stripped away. What reaches later viewers often reads as confident fact about named and unnamed young people who have never been charged. That is the human cost of the current information environment, and any coverage that ignores it fails the people still living inside the case. While reaction content has circled the same public recording for weeks, the institutional process has continued. The family met with District Attorney Angel Myers-McElrath. A grand jury referral is planned once the sheriff's investigation is complete, a standard step in Jackson County for unnatural or suspicious deaths, not itself proof of charges. Both sides agreed to a mutual, simultaneous inspection of Nolan's phone. The FBI continues digital forensics work because Horn Island is federal land. Roughly 60 witnesses have been interviewed. The family's independent legal team has reported dozens of daily calls from people who were on the island or know someone who was. Under Mississippi law, a victim's family is entitled to certain reports within a set window. Communication has since been reassigned to a victim advocate. Grand jury proceedings are private. The family's attorneys will not be in the room. The outcome could involve charges related to evidence handling or statements, rather than the question of how Nolan died. None of that process moves at the speed of a viral clip. The independent examination left cause and manner undetermined in significant part because certain material was not available for the second review. Observations at the back of the head remain listed as pending further investigation. The complete state toxicology report has not been released. Katie McCormack, the last person confirmed to have spoken directly with Nolan, has not given a first-person on-camera account. Those gaps are larger than any single reaction video, and they remain open. Subscribe if you prefer a case this unresolved, explained through what investigators can document, rather than through whoever posts the most confident reaction first. Verified updates reach you only if you are part of the community that waits for them. The next movement in the grand jury process, the phone examination or the toxicology findings, will either narrow the open questions or expand them. Either outcome is worth meeting with evidence. An undetermined finding is an uncomfortable place for a case to sit. It does not confirm drowning. It does not confirm homicide. Into that uncertainty, people bring their prior frameworks, their experiences with institutions, and their theories about how the world works. A genuinely open case becomes a surface onto which almost any narrative can be projected. That pattern is not unique to this story. Any high-stakes situation with documented gaps attracts confident competing accounts long before the facts catch up. The specific shape those accounts take reflects the frameworks the people producing them already hold. Checking the load-bearing claims underneath those accounts against the actual record is the only way to distinguish insight from relief from uncertainty. The load-bearing claims in the reaction that the afternoon call proves knowledge of danger, that background audio proves knowledge of death, that Coast Guard help was actively refused, that a grandfather already knew a tow was unnecessary, either do not hold up against the documented sequence or remain unverified. A larger argument built on claims that collapse under basic scrutiny does not become sturdier because it is delivered with conviction or because it taps into a legitimate broader concern about differential treatment. Structure matters. Evidence matters more. Here is the current shape of what is known, stripped of trending interpretation. Nolan Wells traveled to Horn Island with a long-running friend group on July 4th. The boat developed documented mechanical trouble that afternoon, confirmed by GPS data and a verified distress call to a towing service. Multiple friends who have spoken on the record state that Nolan chose to stay behind with a young woman he had met that day, intending to catch a later ride, a practice they describe as common at that location. He did not return. He was recovered 2 days later. An independent examination returned undetermined findings. A viral video and a viral photograph that once seemed to suggest something more sinister have both been addressed through on-record clarification and metadata. A 30-minute gap in the boat's departure timeline has a mechanical explanation from one of the friends that has not yet been formally matched against dispatch and cell tower records. A grand jury process is in motion. A mutual phone inspection has been agreed. Approximately 60 witnesses have been interviewed. That is the public record. Everything else, the contested audio interpretations, the unverified refusal claims, the broad demographic generalizations layered on top, either fails against the documented timeline or has not been confirmed. Christine and Elmore Wansley are still waiting for the complete state toxicology report and for an explanation of material that was unavailable for the independent examination. They are still waiting for a grand jury process that has not concluded. None of that waiting shortens, because a video convinced a large audience it already knows the answer. Confident, viral, unverified conclusions can make the careful work still ahead harder for the public to stay patient for, because it feels as though the case has already been resolved by someone with a phone camera and strong feeling. Traston Shepard, Warren Hudson, Javon Williams, and Katie McCormack, whether or not she ever chooses to speak publicly, are real young people whose lives have already been reshaped. Some have faced threats for the simple act of telling investigators and reporters what they say they saw. Bart Edmonston Jr., whose documented role that day included helping tow a disabled vessel, has already required legal intervention against unsupported accusations. None of them asked to become symbols in a larger argument about race, institutions, and who is believed. By every verified account, they were teenagers on a boat on a holiday, the same as thousands of others on that same stretch of water that same afternoon. The concerns raised about differential scrutiny are not dismissed here. Ben Crump has raised them directly and specifically, and they rest on patterns larger than any single case. A specific viral video that makes sweeping claims about an entire demographic while resting on load-bearing factual assertions that do not hold is not the same thing as that legitimate concern. Treating the two as interchangeable does a disservice to the serious institutional question underneath and to Nolan himself, whose story deserves resolution by evidence, testimony, and process rather than by whichever clip generates the most heat in a given week. If this account gave you a fact-checked sequence instead of a feeling, subscribe. The only way careful, source-driven coverage continues to reach the people who want it is if those people choose to stay. The next verified development, whether it comes from the grand jury, the phone examination, or the toxicology findings, will be covered the same way every previous claim has been covered: complete, in context, and honest about the difference between what is established and what remains open. The investigation is still active. The sealed materials have not yet moved. When they do, the space between the fixed points will either shrink or expand. Either outcome is worth meeting with the record rather than with the loudest available certainty. The story does not end with a bathroom reaction or with the amplification that followed it. It continues in the slower work of matching digital timelines against witness statements, of waiting for toxicology, of allowing a grand jury to review the full investigative file in private, and of refusing to let demographic generalizations or contested audio captions substitute for the evidence still under seal. Nolan Wells left for a holiday outing with people he had known for years. A boat developed mechanical trouble. A call for private assistance was made. A later call reported him missing. 2 days later, he was recovered. Between those fixed points sit consistent accounts, independent character-based doubts, contested audio interpretations, unverified claims that have traveled widely, and an institutional process that has not yet concluded. The space is still large enough to hold more than one possibility. It is no longer large enough to pretend the loudest reaction has closed it. That is the honest condition of the public record tonight.